And Nick Castle, thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond the Screens.
You're welcome.
And we're going to talk a little bit of The Last Starfighter today, and one of the things that I first think about when it comes to the film is those great computerized special effects that got worked into the story. Can you talk a little bit about utilizing those, at that time, unique effects into the story you were trying to tell?
Oh, well, right. This was the first time that anyone tried to do real photoreal visual effects in a movie, in a feature film. So it was a little hair-raising in the sense that not only were we designing the shots, but we were also doing research and development as the project was being filmed. So we didn't see the ships, for instance, until post-production, but had to use the designs that were put in to estimate what they were going to be looking like. And because of that, actually, we did things like, if you notice the interior of the ship that was going to be matched, we kept it very, very plain because we didn't know how much detail we could actually do. So it limited us to certain design ideas in that sense. It was freeing because you didn't have to worry about the physics of putting a miniature through space. Here you had the ability to do a lot of angles and things like that would almost be impossible with miniatures. So that was kind of fascinating to consider. I think we did a few shots that would have been very hard to do otherwise back then. And of course, it was limited to the ability at the time of the Cray computer, which was this gigantic computer, to really be able to do the work. So it was all in all, fascinating for me to be part of that pioneering work. Yeah.
Well, a lot of fans like myself have a lot of fond memories, a lot of special connections to the film for a variety of reasons, obviously. I'm sure you've heard some of those. What are some of your most fond memories about doing the film?
Well, I think it was working with the crew. I met a lot of people that turned out to be lifelong friends, including Ron Cobb and Jim Bissell, who was the production designer, the art director, but kind of co-production designer with Ron. Jim has gone on to do some great movies. That's the thing that I remember the most is creating some strong lifelong friends. The movie itself was a great challenge. It was only my second movie. I was not, while I liked science fiction, I wasn't an aficionado of that genre, so I kind of had to have a quick education in that world. So that was fun. It was also great working with some of the older talent, like Robert Preston, who was, a fantastic guy, really entertaining to talk to and telling us old stories. And so I think that would be a couple of things.
One of the things I've read about the production, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was like test audiences or audiences were really responding to the whole beta unit component, the fake Alex on Earth, and so you went back and kind of made that a more of a central focus of the story, which I appreciate, by the way, because I think the scenes and all the mistakes that happened on Earth with the beta unit were really, really a nice addition to the film. So can you talk a little about focus on the beta unit story?
Yeah, when we discovered how well that was playing, we realized that the intercutting between Earth and space helped pace the movie much better. To have a couple more scenes there to intercut, so that we're not just in that in the drama, basically, of Alex fighting the Kodan warriors, and you could go back and forth. And so, we realized that was a net plus to do more work. And I think we did 3 more scenes after we had completed the first cut of the movie.
Yeah, you had to kind of remind people there are things still going on Earth while he's up there.
Right, exactly.
All right, well, you mentioned Robert Preston, who it was his last feature film on the big screen. You mentioned how much fun that was. Can you expand on that a little bit, just the opportunity to work with someone like that? And what I've always been curious about, too, is was that something that Robert auditioned for, or did you guys reach out to him and just for the opportunity to have him involved, because he was so perfect for that role?
Yeah. No, the writer actually came up with the idea because as we developed the character, we realized that he was a flim-flam artist, and one of the great roles in the history of film or theater, for that matter, was Music Man, Professor Henry Hill, so we thought about that, and he said, well, why don't we just go for Preston? Robert Preston would be perfect for the role, and then I said, that's just genius. So we offered him the role, and he accepted.
Wow. Did Chris Columbus say he wanted to stay home? No. What if the Wright brothers thought that only birds should fly? And did Galoka think the Ulus were too ugly to save?
Who's Galoka?
Never mind.
I mean, you have a really good cast there, but it's really hard to imagine anybody else playing Centauri other than Robert Preston.
You're right. And as a matter of fact, as there was a chance, we had written a sequel in the last decade, been trying to get it mounted. And that was one of the questions we would ask ourselves, like, who's going to play Centauri? Because we wanted him to reappear. And if you recall, he was an alien, so he could be that was a fake face on him, so it could be anybody. And it was interesting to kind of think through who was that person now. And it was a tough one. No one quite fit the bill.
Really? So that's the sequel was something that you were working on and just kind of didn't develop, or were you looking at maybe a remake or something? What happened with the project?
No, it was a sequel. It was a 25-year later sequel, and with Alex and Maggie still married and with 2 kids living in the trailer park to start with, and a whole new adventure, and a new generation too of young people, and. We did have it set up at one time at Relativity Productions, and we were green-lit to go, as a matter of fact. We had the script is completely done, the storyboards are done, and it just, for one reason or another, it just didn't go. So there's still talk about it having some life. So, but it's been a long slog. Yeah.
I understand. Well, we'll look for that. Well, we were talking a second ago about how it helped to have the computer animation, not having to deal with the models and moving the models around. But the other challenge you had, and you kind of touched on the environment inside the ship, was what you had to create visually outside of computer effects. Can you talk a little bit about what you did to create not only, the inside of Zur's ship, or the inside of where all the starfighters were, and how you guys had to tackle those projects?
Well, for anything that had to have some connection to the digital world, we were, we made sure that the lines, for instance, and there is some connections in the gigantic set where the Enduran, the king of the planet, gives his speech and things like that, because on the back side was a whole supposedly a digital set.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of construct that in a way that had simple lines. And as far as Zur's ship is concerned, that was something totally designed by Ron Cobb and Jim Bissell, and in terms of how to, just imagining, what the villain ship would be like. That allowed them to be have more detail, I think, than they would have in another scene that had to match some digital version of it.
I also think they did a good job with those creatures that are on Zur's ship, and that Cylon kind of sound coming out of their voice was a nice touch.
Yeah, and of course that was all done in post-production, the sounds. But I like the idea of these little characters in these pods, which seemed to be some kind of a robotic character that is both a robot and a battery for the for the ship.
We just talked a moment ago about the cast, and you've mentioned Alex, and of course we had Lance Guest, Catherine Mary Stewart, Robert Preston, but you also made some really good casting decision regarding the really unique characters within the trailer park. Can you talk a little about that casting? I think of Otis and the lady who wants to watch her soaps and all those great characters.
Yeah, we had, I'm going to forget names now, but we had a very good casting person who had a, when we talked generally about the cast, we wanted to have very strong character faces.
Yeah.
And, I knew I was taking the movie, to a certain level of, I used to call it something like a musical without music, So it had, it pumped up the reality a little bit. to make it be a little fun, So it was not going to be as dangerous as some science fiction movies are, but it was going to be kind of lighthearted. So the people that we cast for that had that feel for them. They could have been in a musical comedy, for instance. So we wanted the bigness of that.
Okay. Well, and of course, the character of Grigg is also a very likable character. Had to be pulled off in a certain way, and I think that was very effective.
Yeah. Well, Hurley did a great job on that. He was a real craftsman, and he was a did a really good job under difficult circumstances. That was tough to have that mask on. It really did a number on his face.
Yeah.
And the mask itself took a while to get right. Over our first scenes that we shot with it, which was actually the last scene when it comes down to Earth. I think you could notice from that the mask is a little stiffer, and it played that way. And he did a lot of work, even with that mask, to try to over-accentuate his movements to get anything out of it. So, yeah, as we went along, though, it got better and better for him. They got thinner. The material got thinner, so he could actually use his facial muscles to move the muscles of the mask.
Very nice. Well, it's not hard to really see how a movie like this is that people are still passionate about when you come to a convention like this, and you get to see people like me who are wearing T-shirts and everything. But what are some of the other things that you've heard from fans about the film, and does it surprise you that years after making the movie that people are still talking about it and still have that special connection to it?
Well, it's not as if I've only done 3 conventions. And the conventions have always been centered around the horror genre, which I was the killer in the first Halloween. And that's why
you are Michael Myers.
That's why I really am invited to these things. And then the second thought is my other work. But of all the rest of my work, the one that does pop up the most is The Last Starfighter, probably because it's in the science fiction genre. But also, there's a lot of people who really love it. A lot of people grew up with it. A lot of young people then in the 80s, were 6 or 7 or 8. And they were, I think they related to Alex's little brother, and and the kind of fun of the character, and to a certain extent that was, the age and older that the movie was set for.
Yeah, my wife looks at Alex's little brother Lewis and says, "That's you."
Yeah, exactly.
When she looks at me.
Exactly. That's what I hear a lot of, nostalgia for the era and the character and the time. And there's been some 25-year screenings. There was a couple in Los Angeles where I went to, and you heard people talk about that, and also very interested in the visual effects, as a groundbreaking film in that regard, and wanting to know how that was done. And a lot of those people still around and in that world, and moved on to being really important people in that world. Yeah.
Well, finally, sir, when I look at other projects that you've been in, Escape from New York, The Boy Who Could Fly, and Hook, it seems that when you kind of put all those together and put Last Starfighter together, that you're really drawn to those movies that really can kind of grab someone's imagination and take them somewhere else. Do you think that's a good way to kind of paint the kind of films that you're drawn to?
Well, I'm drawn to everything. I just like a good movie.
Sure, a good story.
Yeah, a good story. Someone with a vision that you go, wow, that's like totally unique. That's the great part about film or any kind of art. You look through someone else's eyes and see the world in a different way, or in a way that you didn't exactly see before you walked into that theater. So I wouldn't say one genre or the other that I'm interested in. You fall into, as a filmmaker, I kind of fell into what I fell into.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Last Starfighter came to me because someone just said, you want to do this science fiction movie? Okay. I said, I've never done a science fiction movie. Yeah. I don't even know. But that being said, I got to do that. I got to do a musical, drama, and some straight out comedies, and so they were all a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
Well, Nick Castle, has been a real pleasure talking to you, sir, about the experience on working on The Last Starfighter and your other projects. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today on the show.
Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun.